This is the sound of common sense defending freedom. The Morning Blaze with Doc Thompson.
Thanks so much for all the tweets and calls this morning. Please tweet at us. We're going to open up the Broad Voice studio line, 888-900-3393. Would spend some time this weekend and go to NRAjoin.com. That's NRAjoin.com. We're really putting a big push on this to help the NRA because they've got these videos that are really spectacular. They release a different video each day. It's showing the heartfelt love that people have for America, and hopefully it'll do some good to show us where we need to go. We need to take this on to a much bigger level. We need to talk about who we are as people. We need to talk about issues and not politics. We need to talk about the founders' most optimistic beliefs for who we are as Americans, and that is good people. I mean, don't you want to believe in your neighbors? Don't you want to trust the media? Well, that's what the NRA is doing with these videos. If you get a chance, please go to NRAjoin.com. So far this week, they've released one on courage, service, work ethic, safety, media dishonesty. All of these things, they're going to make you feel good, and hopefully they're going to confront some of these things and maybe put an idea in some people's heads that haven't thought about these things. So please share the videos if you would. Start at NRAjoin.com. Start at NRAjoin.com, and you'll see them. And if you're not an NRA member, please consider becoming one. NRAjoin.com. One of the things right now that unfortunately is getting a lot of attention because it's not the biggest issue out there, but you could take some comfort that it's an issue that could do some good if we spend some time on, is the Ray Rice case. Ray Rice punches out his then-girlfriend, now wife, in an elevator 10 months ago, something like that, and now has been booted from the Ravens. The Ravens, is that it? Because they're with the
NFL, the National
Football League. I'm not familiar with it. But it's a pro
football. Like college football, but professional.
I say unfortunately because it's not the biggest issue out there, and most of the media doesn't pay attention to, some of the important stuff. But you could say, okay, this is good. Let's talk about this. But even when they try to talk about an issue like this, they are so missing the point because this is not driven about assault. It's not driven about treating your fellow man well. It's driven about women exclusively being the victims of assault, and they are not. We are missing a huge part of this story. Joining us now on the Broad Voice studio line, Paul Elam from the blog A Voice for Men. How are you, Paul?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. This is an issue that Skip and I have brought up in the past, and we like to talk about because people are so ignorant. They don't even know that men can and are abused.
Well, they've been lied to. The reason for that ignorance, they've been lied to for 50 years by a very corrupt domestic violence industry that is ideologically driven and funded, and whose intention is to make people believe that domestic violence itself is solely defined by guys beating their wives for burning the toast. And simply, the picture of actual domestic violence is so much different than that.
Can you explain what it is? And it's pretty much a 50-50, two-way street, right?
Well, yes. Most of the credible research indicates that gender symmetry in domestic violence, most of it is mutual combat where couples attack each other. The CDC has found, though, that in non-reciprocal or one-directional violence, that it is initiated 70% of the time by women.
Whoa, 70% by women?
Yes.
That goes against everything we are taught.
Well, because there's no money in male victims. You tug at people's heartstrings with female victims, and understandably so. I mean, most people don't find the idea of women being beaten very palatable. That's where they get the checkbooks out. That's where you get government votes, is in protecting our women. And I understand that that's a part of human nature. That doesn't change the fact, though, that the actual picture of domestic violence has been very much distorted in order to finance this industry that has a lot of skin in the game.
You know, Paul, I could this morning Skip and I could bring up men being the victim of domestic violence, and we could joke and say what wusses they are, and we could make all kinds of jokes on the air, and everyone would laugh along with us. We tell one joke about women being the victims of domestic violence, and that's it. It's all over. We're done.
Yep. And that's a cultural bias that we really need to get over, because the people that are suffering most for this bias and this failure to understand the nature of what domestic violence is about is the children. You have to remember that 98% or more of domestic violence does not result in serious injury. It is slaps, kicks that don't result in cuts or bruising. They certainly are emotionally damaging for some people. But the fact of the matter is when you're ignoring half the victims and half the perpetrators, the children of those people who witness those violence are very much damaged. And where it concerns men getting slapped around by their wives and their children watching it, those are children to grow up to believe that violence is normal. And we're totally ignoring that. And in fact, as you said, we're turning that into a joke in this culture. And it's pretty sad to see happen.
How is it the numbers get so distorted? How is it? I mean, certainly we got the bias when the media, and I get that part of it, because during this Ray Rice thing, Paul, the whole thing, it's a throwaway line while they're talking about other things around the case for them to say, well, when men hit women, blah, 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 and they move on, it's all one-sided. So I get that part of it, but how else do these numbers get so distorted?
Well, frankly, from people lying to us, if you go right down to the Department of Justice website and look at Eric Holder's information that has been up there and been challenged for several years now, he asserts that somewhere between up to 44% of fatalities in the home or for African American women are caused by domestic violence. The own Department of Justice statistics debunk that totally. That is one errant study that was debunked years ago, but it's a nice little political soundbite. It's a nice way to get people histrionic and fired up. There is 15, 16, 17 causes of death for African American women in the home that outpace domestic violence. It's way down on the list. As a matter of fact, compared to even slipping in the bathtub, domestic violence pales to that in terms of serious injury and death in the home. And yet, despite being called out on that information is still available on the Department of Justice website. This is a propaganda machine that wants to fix the numbers, wants to paint a picture in order to raise money, and they're doing it quite well because, of course, if you say that's not true, anyone who says women aren't being hurt that badly, well, there's your first your first step toward political demise.
Oh yeah, you're done then. I mean, how dare you be so insensitive?
Yes,
I've seen reports that show that when police officers show up at a home, that if there are bruises, marks on both a husband and a wife, a male and a female, that often cases the male will be taken away, arrested, whatever. That unless the man has marks and the woman doesn't, he gets taken away, basically.
Well, and there are many cases where the man will have marks and the woman will have none, and he will still be taken away because we have, out of the Violence Against Women Act, we have these wonderful little training programs called primary aggressor policies, where the police will just actually take and determine when they believe there's mutual combat or they can't tell who was the initiator. They'll say, well, who is larger and more capable of delivering violence?
Okay, well, all right.
They're capable of delivering violence is stupid. How can that be used as a metric in something like this? Capability?
Well, yeah.
It is used as a metric, and as a matter of fact, I would argue that in most of those cases of domestic violence responses, now particularly in those with mandatory arrest laws, where when there's a complaint, somebody has to be arrested. There's 30 states that have that now. The determination on who's going to be arrested is made before the police arrive without any gathering of evidence. The guy is going to jail.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, I've also seen something, too, that one of the other reasons that statistics may get skewed, that make it look like men beat women up more often than vice versa, is that women cause less damage, number one, and number two, guys don't report it because that's not the manly thing to do.
Well, sure, guys really underreport. Women, particularly during the process of a divorce, have a tendency to overreport, if you know what I mean. Incidents of domestic violence. But it is something that fits into a picture. I mean, we do have people lying about it. We do have guys that know better that will just not call because they know they're going to lose in the end. But that the reason is that's a fact. VAWA money is used to train police to arrest men for domestic violence. The Violence Against Women Act is predicated on what's called the Duluth model of domestic violence, which is an extension of patriarchy theory, a theory disproven, by the way, that asserts that domestic violence can only be defined as an expression of male dominance into the home.
Okay, all right. Well, it's no wonder why we're getting the skewed numbers then. I'm talking with Paul Elam from the blog A Voice for Men. Is that a voiceformen.com? Or
yes, it is. Voiceformen.com.
Paul, so what's the solution here? I mean, you see the rape Rice video, and obviously any sane person is going to say, Ray shouldn't have done that. Regardless of the circumstances, he shouldn't have done it. But it also looks like she may have been an aggressor or certainly not. She was a participant in it, may have been coming at him a little bit too. So what's the solution? How do we tell people that men are victims as well?
Well, one would be to abolish VAWA, to just totally tear down the Violence Against Women Act, to restructure an Intimate Partner Violence Act that is totally non-gendered and that actually teaches police truthful statistics and gives them really adequate training about the nature of domestic violence, what's happening in it, that if we're going to go into people's homes with the state and arrest them for marital problems, that we at least ought to do it without regard to sex. But that's the total opposite of what we do. The other side of what needs to happen is that our academic environment has been so overtaken by ideologues and so much bad information. If anybody is interested in this, please Google A Voice for Men Murray Strauss, and you will see Murray Strauss's article on our website. He is one of the world-renowned experts on domestic violence, and you will find that there is a history of bullying academics who try to publish information that does not fall under the feminist narrative. That Richard Gell's, another prominent expert in DV, when his results found and Suzanne Steinmetz found that there was gender symmetry in DV, that they had bomb threats phoned in to where they were going to present.
Wow.
There is a lot of people with a lot of skin in this game, a lot of money in the gendered version. And so the first thing we have to do is get rid of the corruption that's in there, and it's rampant. And nobody will question it, because if you question it, then you must be a misogynist who want women to get beat.
Paul, were you ever the victim of domestic violence? Have you ever been victimized?
You could say I was a victim of domestic violence. I was married once, and I got slapped by my wife. That was it. I don't go much for the victim mentality. It was an unfortunate, uncomfortable thing, not near as uncomfortable or emotional as the divorce process was. But it does happen to men. But again, I think the really important point is to understand that the greatest majority of domestic violence does not result in serious injury to people. Where it really does the most damage is in children who witness violence as a way to settle problems and problem solve as they grow up, because they will grow up very likely to either become abusive themselves or to become an abuse victim.
It's going to be interesting in the future, too, because now you see so many gay relationships, gay marriage popping up, is maybe one of the ways where it starts getting reported that men are abused, too, is when you see the number of homosexuals that get abused. I mean, gay men are top of the list as far as abuse victims, aren't they?
Now I don't have the numbers to pull out of my head at the moment, but the research that I've read indicates that lesbians tend to be the most violent relationships by proportion.
Wow. So this may end up. I'm sure they'll find a way to skew it down the road somehow. But
well, yeah, and if not, they'll just make sure you don't talk about it.
You don't talk about it, right? Hey, you guys have got some pretty cool T-shirts at your website, avoiceformen.com.
Yes, we do. We have some nice T-shirts, coffee mugs, and we have a donation button. We are the ones that are trying to address this with the government and trying to lift public consciousness to understand just how corrupt efforts are to address violence in this culture and how much needs to change. And we appreciate any support people can give us for doing that.
Well, Paul, thanks so much for sharing with us today, and we're going to definitely have you back on at another point as you get new information and new statistics and stories to come out, because I think it's important. I think one of the things we could do is when we watch this Ray Rice video and we hear the news talk about it, at first, pay attention to the language and notice that they bring up specific cases of men attacking women instead of just saying violence is wrong. Instead of saying violence is wrong, they say men hitting women is wrong, or male violence is wrong. Thanks so much, Paul. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Quick break. We'll come back with some of your calls.
Thank you so much for the call, Paul.
You're welcome. Guys, have a great day.
You too now. Take care.
You're welcome. Guys, have a great day.
You too.